Hi friends, it's Danielle with Take Care Mama, and today we are talking about rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. This is a very common trait of those who have ADHD, and by common, I mean like close to 100%. This is a collab with Tanya from Project Happy Home. Almost forgot to mention that. So check out her video when you're done watching this. We both have children with ADHD and love sharing our experiences. So to be perfectly honest, this was Tanya's idea as a topic, and I had never really heard of this before, but I quickly looked it up. Characterized by extreme emotional sensitivity to being criticized or rejected, whether real or perceived. And then I was like, oh, I got this. I am an expert on this because I definitely have this in my life, and my son has ADHD. He has it as well. This is just in my own experience with myself and my son. We both hide it very well that we have this. I even for years hid it from myself at times. I put on this shell, and he does as well. It took me a while to realize how sensitive he is to criticism, whether real or perceived, future criticism that he perceives at times. We don't want people to know we feel this way because that also opens us up to criticism. I hope that makes sense. I want to be perceived as a strong, confident person and not how I really am, which is scared about what people think about me, because if people really knew what was going on in my head, they would criticize me for that. So I say this because if you have a child with ADHD, he or she likely has this, and it's important to be aware of this because we, as their parents, want to facilitate in helping their confidence and helping them get through this disorder and not adding to it. Our ADHD children, let's just say it, do really annoying things. They drive us crazy, and I think it's okay and healthy to communicate that with them. And to be honest, like when you do this, that really bugs me. But we have to be careful in how we do that because we don't want to add to their dysphoria. We are their safe place and want to continue being their safe place. So we want to build them up and not tear them down. I was thinking about this, and I find this very interesting. I am not an expert on narcissism, but to me, you can't get much polar opposite between narcissism and RSD. Like narcissists, again, I'm not an expert, but they think super highly of themselves. They think they're the best. And, you know, RSD is the opposite. But something that they have in common is we think people are thinking about us. A narcissist is this awesome person, and they think everybody knows it, and they're thinking about them like, what a great person. And those of us with RSD are thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. That was so embarrassing. I bet people are talking about me. Did people notice that I looked funny, that I had my shirt on backwards? Like just stupid, silly things like that. When in reality, with both extremes, people care about themselves. They're not thinking about me and my chapped lips right now. Or if they are, it's a split second and they move on. Like people, we care about ourselves. We're not spending our times worrying about other people because we're busy worrying about ourselves. So that is something that I try to work on with my son, to show him that people really aren't thinking about him all that much. And that sounds so funny. Like, of course people care and love him and think about him, but not in a way in which they're focused in on all of his mistakes. So we try to talk about this. One example I can give is, this was back in distance learning with all the Zoom meetings. Please never come back. And James got a haircut. And for some reason, James does not like the attention he receives after a haircut. He perceives that attention as negative. And so he needed to wear a hoodie every day for like 2 weeks after his haircut. And when he couldn't find his hoodie, we would have an outburst of anger. And that's another thing that's really common with this disorder, is it comes off as an intense emotional outburst. And sometimes it just looks like anger, and we have a hard time noticing that the root of it is insecurity. So he had these outbursts, we had to find the hoodie, we had to find the right color of the hoodie because the green one is embarrassing, like all of these things. And then one day we couldn't find the hoodie, and guess what? No one commented on his haircut. No one even noticed. And so we talked about that. Like, isn't that interesting that we spent so much time having the stress and anxiety, and in the end, it was fine. You know, not only did we not get made fun of, but no one even said anything. And in fact, I don't think anyone even noticed. Then we talk about when your friend gets a haircut, do you judge them? Of course not. No. So just try to talk through those situations. I think for me and my son, that is a better approach rather than kind of pushing them into the water, into scary situations. I would rather have real life things come up and then do a debrief, because I remember how that felt as a kid to be pushed in those scary situations. I do think we should be pushed. I do sometimes wish my parents would have pushed me in certain areas, but I also remember when they pushed too hard. So I really try to be sensitive with James on how hard, you know, that push and pull. Last thing I want to talk about is literature. I think reading and books and literature and movies and TV shows, but I think literature can be most helpful in this area, in many areas of life, because we are immersed into another's world, another's perspective. It opens up new experiences. And like I was just saying, I think it's important to debrief, read something. Isn't it interesting how they made this mistake and no one really noticed? Or what would you do in this situation? I think that is such an important question to ask every time you read something, to do a little debrief. What would you do? And how would you do things differently? And I think it's just so important, not only for ADHD and what we're talking about right now, but just in general, to put ourselves into other shoes. And reading and literature just opens up our experience in a non-scary way, because we're at home with our mom, cuddled up with a book. And so that can be a really safe way to talk about these things and these issues. My son James and I, it's very timely because Beverly clearly died this week, but we read a Ramona book. I can't remember which one. I think Ramona Quimby, age 8. It doesn't matter which one. Man, and we loved her and we loved talking about her, and she is someone who made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. And we talked about how we love her. We love Ramona, and not in spite of all the mistakes she makes, but we kind of love her because of all the mistakes she makes. And she's not afraid to show her mistakes. And so that was a good example of us to read someone who was brave. I think that's even one of the books, Ramona the Brave. She's brave and she's messy and she fails. And people don't notice all that much. I mean, we notice that she fails, but we move on with our lives. We close the book and go on to dinner, and we're not thinking, oh, Ramona, I can't believe she made that mistake. If anything, we're thinking, man, I love Ramona, because we see ourselves in her. And so, I mean, I just love reading with James and myself. And man, I just think it's so important to read with your kids, and movies too. Watch a movie. I'm not against screen time at all, but before you go to bed after the movie, talk about it. What would you do? What would you do differently? Can you believe he made this mistake? And you know what? It was worth it. He failed the first time, but he got up and tried again, fell down again, second time. he got up and tried again, and then his life was forever changed because he didn't let people's criticism or future criticism of him to stop him from living how he wanted to live. And so I think that's just so important. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a little bit about what this is and how to be gentle with your kids, because I think it's hard to identify sometimes that our kids' outbursts are actually stemming from insecurity. And I think it's good to debrief after situations, after they fall down, and to talk about it. And then literature. Read to your kids, consume stories with your kids, consume stories about kids who look and act like your children, and stories that look and act differently. And that is just so good for their worldview, for their self-esteem. And make sure you debrief after those stories and to say to your kid, what would you do? Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out Tanya's video, which is linked below. I can't wait to see what she thinks. She is a wealth of information. We hope to see you next month for another ADHD video. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye, guys.